Hello. A question that I get time to time is how it all started. I mean, the PrimeFaces that led to other Prime libraries, the company, and open source community and things like that. So in this video, I'd like to give you a brief history that may even inspire some younger developers to get into open source and improve it themselves. So after my graduation from the university, I started working on a company, defense contractor. It was a military project. So I started working on JSF, and we were using Sans implementation, but I got interested in Apache MyFaces, because it was open source and there was a community behind it, a nice group of guys. After sending patches, getting involved in the mailing lists, I got an invite for being a committer, and I got into Apache Software Foundation. Then my life actually has changed. I got a job offer from another MyFaces committer, and it was a remote job. And back in 2006, the remote jobs were not really popular, so I was the only one in the coffee shops, mostly with a laptop. So after working with that company for a year, I got into the military for mandatory military duty. There I was also worked with computers, still involved in the open source as much as I can. Then after it ended, I moved to United Kingdom because my wife started her master's degree there in London. And turns out, and I was a young guy, so I didn't think things through. So it turns out I was thinking that I had some ego when I was young, which doesn't exist right now. But when I was young, I had a lot of ego. So my ego prevented me to get something called a work permit. Maybe you've heard of it. It turns out that you need that to work in the UK. So I was like, okay, I'm an open source committer. I'm kind of famous in the JSF community. JSF was hot back in 2008 and 10s as well. So I went there. I got a lot of actually job interviews with the recruiters, but when they asked me about if I have a work permit, I said, what permit? Anyway, and of course the phone hung up, and there I was burning all my money because London is pretty expensive, Then I got the job interview with the Spring Source, back the maintainer of Spring Framework. Back in the day, it was called Spring Source, and they were okay with me not having a work permit, so they accepted that they will sponsor me in 2009. So I had it was a long process. Turns out I waited for a couple of months. While I was waiting there, because I was safe now, I can just go on. I will, start working on mainly work on JSF and Spring integration, Spring Webflow, a lot of JSF stuff. So I had a lot of free time. I mean, the hours and hours of free time while I was waiting for my work permit. So I started working on. I had a project called UI for JSF based on Yahoo UI library. So that didn't end up well. So I created a new project called PrimeFaces. It was using Yahoo UI initially. I also had some add-ons like Faces, Trace, and Optimus. Optimus we were using Google Juice. Faces, Trace for like debugging. And while I was working on PrimeFaces, the JSF community was dominated by rich faces and nice faces. So it was pretty hard to get in the market. But then something magical happened. JSF 2.0 happened. And the libraries, the rich face and nice faces, did not migrate to, maybe could not migrate to JSF 2.0 easily. There was like a window for 1 year, and when even they did, their products were like half baked. Rich faces could not port all their components. Ice faces, in the end, they tried to fork PrimeFace as well. But I was kind of lucky. I directly worked with JSF 2.0 APIs when creating with PrimeFaces. So for more than a year, PrimeFaces was the only available UI library for JSF 2. And JSF 2 was hot. I mean, a lot of new features. It's fixed a lot of problems of the JSF 1. And due to that time, PrimeFaces gained a little traction. And then there was an economic crisis, and Spring Source decided not to proceed with the work permit stuff. And I was broke in London with no money and no money to pay the rent. I said to my wife, I'll go back to Turkey. Even on the airport, I was working on the PrimeFaces. So I went back to Turkey. Turns out I was eligible for a work permit, and I got it in a week. But due to some new regulations in the UK, if I was late for 2 more weeks, the UK was only granting work permits for people with master's degree, which I did not. So for 2 weeks, I saved kind of my life. I went back to UK, London. I find a job in a startup in London, and then I moved to another company, big company, Visa. I was doing, of course, not doing payment stuff, just changing the colors of buttons there for 6 months. And during that time, PrimeFaces got extremely popular, and it was crazy. Many companies started using it, and it was open source. It was a hobby project. Then I got mails like, can you just add this feature? Can you just fix this for us? And things like that. And I tried. I was very, I was commuting for three hours every day from London to Reading, to the office of Visa. And during my two rides of the tube to subway, and half an hour ride from London to Reading, and like 15 minutes walk from the station to the office. So I had some time to work on PrimeFaces while I was commuting, especially on the train. Then I just got offers like, there people were trying to offer money to do some changes, even to fix some bugs and add new features. And I earned like $100 for adding a feature, and I just, okay, maybe, if I can improve the stuff, offer some services, paid add-ons and things like that, maybe I can work on this dream, which is working on my combining my day job and night job as well, because at nights I was working in the weekends, and Saturdays and Sundays I was working on crazy. It was a passion project. And then after 6 months, then I was eligible, kind of, although London was expensive, I started doing consulting and trainings, started to pay my rent with PrimeFaces. Then I moved back to Turkey after 2 years in London. I created a company, and since then I've been, trying to improve the libraries. So initially it was mostly training and consulting. Then I started to offer, paid add-ons like the templates. Even now, the last week's Prime Blocks is one example. PrimeFlex is fully open source. You can create your own blocks, and if you like to prefer some, ready blocks, you can use Prime Blocks. You can purchase Prime Blocks. Templates, we have free templates, and you can create your own template or purchase one of the built-in templates. The main rule I have is to make the UI component libraries under MIT license all the time. Do not charge for it. So the thing is, the one rule that I haven't broken, I have no plans, no intentions to break, is the UI component libraries will always be open source. And right now, until now, no problems on that part. And with some paid add-ons like support services, licenses, and things like that, the company has adapted to an open source business model. And in 2006, I was always jealous of AngularJS, and I was kind of, I thought that I lost the train because train moved on. There are some libraries for it, but then Google decided to rewrite it and rename it from AngularJS to Angular, and that was like the history repeating itself. Remember my story about JS 2? So the Angular 2 was the same. So after I got the news, I started coding like crazy, and PrimeNG came out, and now it's one of the most popular libraries for PrimeNG. And then it followed, Prime React followed, and Prime Vue followed. They're also getting more popular every day. So right now at NPM, PrimeFaces is not on NPM. Like, we have more than 50 million downloads for the Prime libraries. They're all open source. And so there's a huge community behind it on the Discord and the forums. So, and it all started with a hobby project that I created to spend my time because I was quite bored. So maybe, you know, it will inspire younger developers. If you had some, probably you will have some sort of side project that you're working on, and who knows, it will be at some point you will start paying your rent with that project if you start believing in it, and if you put some, you know, business model, if you can support it with a business model. Even if not, I mean, if you just work on open source, it can open doors for you. If you can get a better salary, you can get a better job. Because I mean, I was interviewing for PrimeFaces jobs, and I was a committer of PrimeFaces, and I was just the best candidate for the job. So it's opened a lot of doors for me, and it helped my career. So I hope it wasn't a boring story. Thank you, and see you in another video. Bye bye.